What happened with me is that I just had red flag after red flag. And it wasn't, these weren't even things that I'm talking about. It was more an internal sort of knowing that this is not what I should be doing. But every time I thought, oh, I'd like to drink less or I'd like to stop drinking, I would think, I can't do that.
Welcome to Your Second Act, the podcast that proves that life doesn't have to end at 40, 50, or even 60, because when it comes to living your best life, age is just a number. Hey guys, it's Michelle, your host, and thank you once again for having me in your ears. I'm excited to share another inspiring story with you today that I think will really resonate. You know, as you move through midlife, so much shifts. And one thing that's been on my mind lately is our relationship with alcohol. It's funny how something that once felt so normal, so woven into social life, can start to feel completely different. And personally, I found that I just don't handle alcohol the way I used to. And I know that I'm definitely not alone with this feeling. So back in April, I decided to take a month off from alcohol. And I no longer, interestingly, have that desire for it. And while I still enjoy having a drink every now and then, I still feel that after a couple of glasses, I just feel done. I don't have the desire to keep on drinking. But am I done forever? I don't know. I don't think I can answer that question. Could I completely give up alcohol? But my guest today, Ali, she did just that. She decided to stop drinking over a year ago and she hasn't looked back. And I'm so curious to hear how she did it, what she learned about herself along the way, and why she's still choosing to stay alcohol free. So I think her story is one that might just make you rethink your own relationship with alcohol. So let's just dive in. Hey, Ali, congratulations on hitting this huge milestone of a year without alcohol. Now that's a big accomplishment, wouldn't you say?
It is. Thank you.
As we hit midlife, I think many of us start to notice how our relationship with alcohol changes. And I, for one, have noticed a big change. It either stops us making us feel good or we keep going with the different effects that it gives to us with our minds and our bodies. And I'm really interested in knowing how you were able to navigate this new stage in your life without alcohol. So, science is pretty clear that reducing or even giving up alcohol as we age can have major benefits. And I'm really excited to find out why this is. And I know that you've done a lot of research into this. So, let's just get stuck into it. But I just wanted to start with what was your relationship like with alcohol before you decided to give it up?
Yeah. Okay. So I was probably best described as a party girl. I loved going out. I loved drinking with my friends. I wasn't a daily drinker or drinking alone or any of those things, but I definitely loved to party. And I thought that was a really big part of who I was.
And that started probably from quite a young age, would you say?
Definitely. Yeah. I first drank when I was probably 15, 16, and by 18, I was a proper drinker. I knew, you know, could drink quite a bit. And I grew up in a country town where alcohol is a big part of socializing, as I'm sure it is everywhere. But yeah, it became part of that social identity pretty early on.
So, how did you get to the point of giving it up? What was it that made you do it?
Well, there wasn't really a thing. I think what happened with me is that I just had red flag after red flag. And it wasn't, these weren't even things that I'm talking about. It was more an internal sort of knowing that this is not what I should be doing. But every time I thought, oh, I'd like to drink less or I'd like to stop drinking, I would think, I can't do that. So it took quite a while, a bit of therapy and a lot of sort of practice before I got to the point where I gave up for a year.
Wow. And your year was about a month ago, is that right? The anniversary of, yeah.
Yeah, it was August sometime. Yeah.
Right. And have you had a drink since? completing the full year.
No, I haven't.
That's interesting. Have you wanted to have a drink?
No, I haven't. So, I sort of thought about it a lot when I got to a year. But at that time and still, I'm just not ready to reintroduce it. I think we'll get to this. I've done a lot of sort of personal work in that year. I think taking alcohol away makes other things come to the surface, and you feel you need to address, and you can delve a bit deeper into. And I feel like I'm still doing that work, and I don't want to reintroduce alcohol. I don't feel like it's going to add anything to my life at this point.
Are you scared by possibly having a glass of whatever might spur you on to wanting to drink more and going back to your old behaviors?
I am, yeah, I am definitely. Um, there's a bit of a theory around drinking that there's a spectrum of alcoholism, and it starts with your first drink. And so imagine there's a spectrum, and the other end is alcoholism. And wherever you are on that spectrum, you even though if you give up for a year or 2 years, you'll end up going back to that. And I don't know if I fully believe this, but it is a bit scary because I don't wanna drink like I used to. Um, so that might be part of what's holding me back. But I also think I just never wanna regret a drink. I'd like to be able to have a drink again, if the time comes that I feel like I'd like to, and I'm sure that will happen. But I don't ever wanna regret it. So I don't ever wanna drink when I shouldn't. I think as midlife women, you know the days you shouldn't, right? Hormones come into it, and you know there's certain days where you're like, "It's not gonna go well."
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember you telling me that when you celebrated your 1 year anniversary, I'm making you out to sound like you're an alcoholic.
It's okay, it does sound like that, but it's
Yeah, I
fine.
know. Here's your little badge. You did mention that a lot of your friends and family, because you put it on Instagram, reached out to you and said, "Wow, how did you do it? I wish I could do it." How did you do it?
Okay, well, I'll tell you, so like I said before, I was getting sort of this knowing in my body that this was wrong, and I knew I had to change it. Um, and it was just sort of a muscle that I had to keep flexing. So I started by doing a month off. I'll go back to it, and I'm sure a lot of people have done that. Then I did a term, which felt like a school term, so I couldn't face doing the holidays because we go away in the holidays, and so, like, I could only really do the routine days, and I did a term, and then I went back to it. But every time I went back, I was like, "No, this is not it's not working." It didn't fix my relationship with alcohol, by having even a long period off. It didn't change anything. So, what I did was I reached out to a sobriety coach. And she's been wonderful. Her name's Kath Elliott, and she's based in Melbourne. And I had an introductory call with her, and she talked about a bit of the science. And I'd done a lot of reading on the subject. I'd read books, I'd listened to podcasts. I sort of knew a lot about the science behind alcohol and how it affects us. But I still had this emotional connection to it. Um, anyway, Kath said to me, "I think you should do 12 sessions with me." And I thought, "Really? Like, that seems like a lot." I thought maybe a few sessions, but I did it. I signed up for 12 sessions 'cause I thought, "Well, she's the expert." And I really feel like that's what kept me going to a year. So I did a couple of months. I think the first couple of months are pretty easy if you really want to change it because you're in the honeymoon period. You feel great. You feel smug. You know, you're on a bit of a high. People are interested. Um, and then it got to about 3 or 4 months, and then I found it really, really tough. Just going to parties kinda sucked for a while. I was really struggling with it, and not knowing if I was doing the right thing, and she really got me through that. So I'd speak to her once a month, and often there was an event coming up, like, for example, there was a mum's weekend with all the school mums, and I was really worried about going to that. And so she coached me through that and said, "Okay, is there anyone you need to speak to in advance and tell them about this?" And, make it easier for you to not have to have those tough conversations once people are drinking. Um, so those conversations were really helpful to sort of fortify me to get through the next thing. And then it was Christmas, and then it was like, hey, what's Christmas going to look like? What's the holiday going to look like? Um, what's a ski trip going to look like without alcohol? So I really credit her with getting me through that, or just keeping me going. Because I don't know if I would have gone past sort of that 4-month mark if I didn't have Kath coaching me.
When you said initially you took a month off and then you went back, did you go back to the old ways of drinking? Or do you think that there started to be a shift in the way your relationship was with alcohol? Like, did you have feelings of guilt when you had the first drink?
Oh, yeah, probably. I went back to drinking the same. And I think there's a lot of science behind that too, that there are reasons that you drink. And so it's hard to change that in a month's time.
What are the reasons? Why do we drink?
Well, for me, I think it was a social anxiety thing. I've always had anxiety since I was young. And I think it's learnt behavior, isn't it? It's like you learn quite quickly that if you have a couple of drinks, you can talk to people easier. Um, and then I think it became a bonding tool, to meet new people. I've moved around a lot in my life, so every time I went to a new place, that's how I bonded with people. I would look for the party people because then I knew I'd be able to bond with them quickly.
Oh, that's so crazy. I get that. So true. Because then you think, oh, yeah, she's kind of, or he, they're kind of free spirited and they're having alcohol, then I feel automatically comfortable with that person. So it breaks the ice.
Yeah, and you don't have to be vulnerable because you've got alcohol on board.
Yeah, Dutch courage.
So it's like you can make those friends quickly because you've got this social lubricant. So I think that was another reason I definitely drank. And I think as anxiety became more of a part of my life, I definitely drank to quieten the anxiety. Because anxiety releases a hormone called GABA, and it gets you out of your head and back in your body. And it does that very quickly. And we all know how it feels after one drink, right? If you're worried about something before. So it works. It really does to ease that little bit of anxiety that you might not even know is there. So I think those a lot of the reasons I drank, yeah.
So, by understanding the science behind it, do you think that that's what kept you going? Because it's a really hard thing to do, especially if you're saying you're a party girl and that was a big part of your life, being social and drinking. And I've been in those situations where I've said, I'm not having a drink, and you're with a whole group of people that are drinking, and you get FOMO because you think, well, I'm not on the same level as you now. I'm just on a water and it's not as fun. So it's hard. And then you succumb to it, don't you? You think, I'll just have one. So to actually do that is hard.
Totally, those moments are really hard, and they're still hard for me. You don't get to that, like, it's like a quick way to get to that fun, relaxed, conversational vibe when you're with people, right? And you don't get there as quickly, and it is hard. Sometimes that first round of drinks, you're like, "Okay, I'll get there," but it is hard, and I think that's why for me, having those, a month, a term, a year on it, um, helped me to go, "Okay, when you get to the end of that, you can make your choice," because otherwise you would give into it. Those moments are tricky, and you've got to always come back to why you're doing this, and I think for me, just having that it's not an option is so much easier than I'll have one.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So,
Like, what's the
one always
point?
leads to two, and
That's it.
yeah.
How have friends reacted to your new change?
Pretty well, actually. I was really worried about friendships changing when I first embarked upon this, and I think that sort of stopped me from doing it. That was one of the things that stopped me from doing it for a while, and obviously that coaching really helped. Um, yeah, some friends have tried to talk me out of it at times, and um, or said you really should drink for this event or whatever it is. But I've just come back to, no, this is really important to me and I really want to do this. Um, and people are pretty good with that, you know? I think if you have conversations with them sober, it's so much better. If you start to have conversations when people are drunk, that it's not as good. They don't People don't respond as well. So, no, it's been good. It has changed friendships a little bit, not a huge amount, but, I'm not doing the Friday night drinks. I'm not doing the, getting together to go to the pub as much. I'm not great in the evenings, it turns out. I don't really wanna do stuff in the evenings as much as I used to, funnily enough. I love socializing in the morning. We see each other at the gym, for example, love the gym for a chat and, walks and swims and that kind of thing. So I've sort of tried, and you have to work pretty hard to make those things happen and to make sure there's something else in the friendship. Because of course there are friends I've got all over the world who, um, the thing that we did together or that we do together was drinking. That was our shared interest.
And I've had some of the best times on alcohol.
So yeah,
And they're amazing memories, but I can just imagine it's so hard to make that shift. And I also think that when people say to you, "Oh, come on, you can't let me drink by myself," and there's that peer pressure, I suspect that would be really hard. But I think a lot of the time, it's really got to do with the person and their insecurities. And I remember when we caught up, you said how some people really couldn't understand why you were doing it, or how can you do it? It's I think it's tough, and that takes a lot of resilience to say, like you said, I'm doing this because it matters to me. But I can imagine peer pressure is big because you don't want to be known as the one that's boring and not having fun, but you can still have fun, right? You just don't have the stamina to last hours.
well, I feel like at the beginning, I really overcompensated by staying to the end, by get involved in the dancing and the silliness and the carry on, even if that wasn't really my natural instinct to do that. I've made myself do it to show that I was still going to have a good time. As time's gone on, I still love going out and seeing friends and all of that. I think what one thing that helps is to set an intention for the night and go, okay, who do I want to talk to tonight? Who do I want to really catch up with? Um, think about a few conversations you really want to have, people you want to single out and have a chat to. Because otherwise, then you've got a bit of a purpose and you're not just sort of aimlessly looking around at everyone drinking. I feel like that can help. But I think also, imagine if we removed alcohol from socializing altogether or if it wasn't a thing. Social events would be very, very different. So you wouldn't have a lunch that goes until 9 p.m. You wouldn't have a party that goes for 10 hours.
It's crazy. Yeah.
So I find that I'm really good for the first little while, then I'll usually have a slump and wanna go home, and then I can get back into it a bit later. But parties wouldn't be that long if no one was drinking anything.
So true. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's natural to that if you're not drinking anything, that you don't necessarily wanna still be at that party in the 5th and 6th hour.
No, because what are you actually, if you think about it, what are you getting out of being at a venue with people for 6 hours? I mean, usually it's the first couple of hours that you have the proper conversation, and then after that, it turns to a bit of gibberish, doesn't it? Which can be very funny, absolutely. But someone said to me who doesn't drink, when I go somewhere, I find that within 2 hours, I'm done because I've spoken to who I wanted to speak to. I've had the catch up. I don't have the need to stay longer. And a lot of this has been really making me think about my social outings. And I think, yes, he was right because it's those conversations you have initially are more meaningful than the ones you have 9 hours down the track.
Definitely, and there's a lot of fun to be had if you are drinking. Whether it's fun or not, I don't know. You think it's fun at the time. Um, but yeah, I find I'll be good for 2 hours, then I'll wanna go home, and sometimes I do. But then it's actually once dancing starts happening, I'm back into it because I enjoy that. And I'm fine. I can karaoke sober, I can dance sober. I've got a lot better at that as the years gone on, yeah.
So, how has it impacted your anxiety? Because you were saying that, you've always felt quite anxious.
Mm. Well, I think, um, it definitely makes an impact immediately. I think everyone knows that if you've had lots to drink, you're not going to be feeling great mentally the next day. So definitely like having consistent sleep, no alcohol in your system makes an impact. But I think the bigger thing for me has been the sort of the personal work I've done taking alcohol away. And, I wasn't a massive drinker. I was at what I would say a normal drinker, but probably more on the higher side of a normal drinker. You wouldn't think that's such a big change, would you, just taking that one thing out? But it made a huge change or it started me on a bit of a journey, for want of a better word, of sort of self discovery and getting closer to the person I really am. Um, and so that's been really interesting. And I didn't expect that. And to be honest, I would have been a bit daunted by that if I knew that was going to happen. But it's turned out to be the best thing because I've had to show up in situations and live life without the crutch of alcohol. And that's led me to do some deeper therapy, explore things like breath work um, and just doing more reading. And I really feel like I've done a lot of development work, and that's helped with my nervous system and my anxiety a lot.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's not really like immediately it helps, but it's been more the longer term
Yeah.
process.
And what have you learnt about yourself through this process?
Well, I'm not exactly a party girl. Yeah.
Really? That's interesting.
Well, I enjoy a party, but I'm not as much of a party girl as I thought I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably a bit quieter than I thought I was, which is fine. Much more sensitive. And I guess that's another thing, another reason to drink is that sensitivity. But it's actually a beautiful thing if you can lean into it. So I think, yeah, I'm still on that path. I'm still figuring all that out, but that's what I've found so far.
That's so wonderful though, isn't it? To give yourself that space to kind of work out who you really are. Because I think growing up, we're so conditioned to think certain ways, and you get influenced by different stages of your life, you get influenced by different people. And that kind of makes you who you are. But when you really stop and do something like you have done, you surprise yourself, don't you? You think, I always thought I was this type of person, but actually I'm not. Um, yeah. So, what advice would you give to somebody who is maybe thinking they want to give it up, but they have all these hang-ups that I can't do it, or if I do it, will it change things with my friends or my family? Or just how hard is it going to be? Can I stick to it? Because I think also you're accountable to yourself. And sometimes that can be really hard because you're letting yourself down. So, yeah, well, like what advice would you give to somebody?
Well, I would say just start small, read some books. There's a great book called Beyond Booze by Sarah Rusbatch, and she's a sobriety coach from Perth who wrote this book. It's come out in the last year, and I really liked that book. It basically consolidated a lot of the things that I'd learned from other places. It consolidated it all in one place. So that was really great for me. There's Alcohol Explained. I don't remember the author now, but that's kind of the Alan Carr, like How to Quit Smoking, like that. So there's Alcohol Explained 1 and 2. So I would read a book or two, listen to some podcasts, just start with the idea of it and observing your own behavior and seeing, what maybe your reasons for drinking are, what you might be able to do to change that, and then try to commit to a period off. I mean, if you follow some of these alcohol sobriety influencers on social media, a lot of them do challenges. So I have a friend who did a challenge with one of them, and it was like 30 days, and there's a lot of information. So I had a personal coach, but you can do a program with, lots of other women in it, lots of other people in it, and there's community around those groups as well that you can.
Yeah, which is important.
Yeah,
Community.
I having someone like that was a real game changer for me. It made me keep going, and even though I thought I knew it all, I thought I knew what my problem was and what the science said and all of that, I didn't at all. And the process of removing alcohol obviously led to this um, getting closer to what your values are, what your purpose is, what you really want to do. Um, and my coach helped me a lot with all of those questions. And obviously, that's because that happens for a lot of people when they remove alcohol. So she's there for that journey and sort of knows what might come up. So it sort of becomes more like a life coach relationship.
Yeah, which I think life coaching is amazing.
So
More
good.
people should do it. Oh, yeah, just that one person that you can download to. It's a form of therapy, of course, but I think they can really get you through some hard, challenging times. And yeah, I didn't realize that there would be a coach to do with alcohol. I guess there's coaches for everything. So that's really good to know that there's support. And like you said, online there are so many accounts. What's the one? Is it Sober in the Bush? What
Oh, yes, over in the country,
in
I
the
think.
country? In the country.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really popular too.
she's done a lot of work, and she's got a big following. So there are communities out there that if you feel you need some encouragement, it's there. But I guess it starts with realizing this is what I want to do. But I think your advice, a small step, because like anything, if you look at the big picture, you just think, I'm never going to be able to climb that mountain. It's too hard.
Take that first step because I thought this is part of who I am. This is how who am I without, that. I found it really hard to separate my identity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the identity. That's also interesting, isn't it? Because you think that's who you are. That's part of you, this relationship that we all have with alcohol. And I think Australians as well, we're big drinkers. It's part of our social arena, isn't it? Like everywhere you go, there is alcohol. You just don't get away from it. So it's just that discipline.
Yeah, and it's been a really important change for my kids. I've got 3 kids, and the eldest is in year 8, and then the other 2 are a bit younger. But it's been really interesting watching how they respond. And they're 2 of them in particular are really like, "Mum, you're not gonna drink, are you?" And I honestly don't think I damaged them with when I was drinking when they were younger, but I think they noticed the difference that I was around more, I was more present. I was coming home at 10 o'clock instead of at 1 o'clock, and I was more available to them. I think that's been a really nice change, and also modeling that behaviour for my eldest and when the others come up, because obviously it's a big part of teenage years.
Oh, you're getting into that soon. Yeah. Year 9, that's when it all starts to shift.
I've heard.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Modeling that you don't have to drink, you can still go to every
Yeah.
hopefully will rub off on them a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And look, I think they'll go through their own journey and of course they're going to try it. It's natural. But I do think I grew up with parents that didn't drink. And personally, I really did not start drinking until I was 25. And that's quite late. But before that, I just never had the desire. And I wasn't around people that drank a lot. But then from then on, then my relationship with alcohol definitely changed. So, yeah, when we were chatting and then you told me that you'd got a whole year, I thought, this is so interesting because I find in midlife, and I'm a lot older than you, it just doesn't make me feel good. Even now, I'll have one or two and I just can't do anymore. I feel it within myself. And I was never that type of person. I was never a big drinker, but I would keep drinking because I'd have fun. But my God, the next day. And now I don't want the lack of sleep because I find sleep hard anyway. And I think, well, I don't want to add that to it as well. And just the clarity and let's face it, what it does to your body, it's not great. So yeah.
We make a lot less of a certain hormone that breaks down alcohol as we hit midlife, and so there's a reason why we don't tolerate it as well, and then it affects our sleep, which is obviously something a lot of people struggle with. But yeah, I think if you're curious, just try to do a night, like go to an event. Another thing I was gonna mention is cravings only last 5 minutes. So you get there, you wanna have a drink, you definitely wanna have a drink because everyone's having a drink. You have something else. Like, I actually love a 0 beer. and I wasn't a beer drinker, but zero beers are really close to the real thing, and you drink them quite slowly, and it's feels like it's something. Um, there are lots of other alcohol-free options around, but if you're going to an event, that's what you're most likely to find is a zero beer because a lot of places don't stock the zero cocktails or wines. Um, yeah, so getting through that initial craving, um, is you're well on your way, and then there might be another one that comes up throughout the night, and you try to get through that one. By the end of the night, you feel so good about yourself that you've got through, and by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, or whatever it is, you're like thinking, "I'm so glad I didn't drink. I feel so good now. I can get in my car and drive home and go to bed, and I'm gonna sleep well." So just starting like that and just try to do a night or having a mate where you do it together is good. I found a few of my friends have been drinking less, and having a wingman at some of these events we go to or lunches or 50ths or whatever is really nice. Sometimes we can take some, alcohol-free sparkling, so we're still part of the champagne hour.
Yeah, which is so good, isn't it? And you see it time and time again now. It's popping up, all these great alternatives that don't have alcohol. So you can still have a nice little fizzy drink if you want, but it's not alcohol.
It's not the same, it's definitely not the same, but it gets you through that craving, and it's like it's just the whole being part of that moment.
Yeah. I asked myself this question the other day. Could I completely give it up? I can't answer that question. I don't know. At the moment, I would say no. I think, yeah, I don't think I'm at that point. I could go like 2 weeks without drinking, but if I'm in a situation, in a social situation, I'll still say, oh, yeah, I'm going to have that glass of wine because I really enjoy it. So, yeah, I'm not, I personally, I don't know if I could say that. I think that would be a really big undertaking, I guess, if that's the right word.
Very hard. I have found it very hard. I think it just got to the point for me where I just knew I had to do it. I couldn't keep drinking that. I didn't want to be drinking the way I was drinking in another 5 or 10 years. I definitely didn't. So I knew I had to, and it's very, very hard to moderate. It's very, very hard to drink less than what you know how I was talking about the spectrum? So, if you're not too far along the spectrum and you're pretty happy with your relationship with alcohol, nothing needs to change. I'd gone to the point where I'd just gone a little bit too far and I didn't like how much I was drinking, how often I was drinking, and it's very, very hard to go back to just a bit less. That's really hard. And there's something about our subconscious and our, because I won't go into the science of it, but just read Alcohol Explained and you'll get it. But, it's hard to do that. So giving it up entirely for me was what I had to do. And maybe one day I'll drink again and hopefully I can go back to just having 1 or 2. Um, but yeah, I think if you're at a point where you're like, I don't really have a you don't have a feeling that you need to give it up, then maybe just stick with it.
Yeah, exactly. Such an individual thing. So your
Yeah,
husband must love that you're the designated driver all the time. Must make life easier that way.
it really does. It really does. He does like that. Yeah.
And what about within your relationship with your husband? Has that changed things? Because has he given up with you or is he still drinking?
Well, I was really worried about that because it was something that we loved to do together. Not we weren't getting wasted together, but we loved to have a drink together at home, and when we're on holidays. Um, but he was really supportive when I did give up. Um, and after a few months, he actually listened to the Alcohol Explained book when he was on a long drive, and then he gave up for a while. And he had Christmas off and a couple of months around Christmas, which was really great for me. I mean, one thing I did say when I started is I don't expect you to change your drinking because this is about me and I couldn't have anyone else, I couldn't be relying on anyone else's behavior. It was just, this is a me thing. It's not a you thing. So I didn't ask him to do it, but I think he obviously thought it was interesting and he did give up for a while. And now he just doesn't drink at home at all anymore. We used to drink at home a bit. So we just don't have any alcohol in the house now. And that's how he's changed his relationship with it. It's just by not really at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this is amazing what you've done, Ali. I mean, I'm really impressed because I know it's not easy, but I think what I'm hearing is also not just the relationship with alcohol has changed, but the relationship with yourself. You've really started to get to know you. And I am a big advocate for that, especially in midlife. It's like give yourself the chance to really find out who you are. And I think that's beautiful. And that never stops, right? You keep learning new things about yourself. And I think that's the most exciting part of this journey.
That's been the thing that surprised me the most and the thing that's been the best about it too, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. Well, how I like to conclude every episode is I always have this signature question that I like to ask all my guests. Now, sometimes a powerful quote can offer us guidance and insight, and I absolutely love quotes. Is there a quote that stuck with you throughout your life that you'd like to share with us?
There is, well, it's a very simple quote that I say a lot to my kids and to myself, and it's, "We can do hard things," which is a Glennon Doyle quote, and I think that's the name of her podcast, I think.
Ah,
Um,
I'm not sure.
yeah, so I think it might have been in her book a few years ago, Untamed.
Yes,
Yeah, we can do hard things, and I think that does apply to the journey I've been on. It hasn't been easy, but it's like you can do hard things and they pay off in the end.
exactly. It's just giving yourself the chance to explore if you can do it. And I think at the end of the day, we can all do it. If you put yourself out there, you can still achieve it. You might not achieve it in the way you think you're going to achieve it, but the fact that you've taken the step, definitely. I love that quote. Thank you for sharing it with us. And thank you so much for sharing your story. Hopefully, it will resonate with someone. And maybe there are a few people out there thinking they'd like to possibly give it up. And how can they do it? So I think you've given us some great advice on, possibly get a coach, listen to some podcasts, do some reading, and there are communities out there that can help. So thanks, Ali. It's been great chatting.
Thanks, Michelle.
See you at our next workout.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Your Second Act. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could rate and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to me.